it is Good Friday, so it is the start of our Easter weekend, but I'm still here to give you the next instalment of the Twits. So, if you haven't seen the previous videos, go back and watch them because we are getting very close to the middle of the book now, so you've missed quite a lot. However, I will recap what's happened in the previous chapters from yesterday, just so we can keep up to date with what we're doing. So, yesterday we found out that Mr. Twit needed to get Mrs. Twit stretched. Obviously it's not real, but he's fully convinced Mrs. Twit that this is going to be what fixes her and makes her long again. So he decided to tie her ankles to the ground and attach lots of helium balloons to her all over her body so that she would be stretched by the balloons. And then he realised something even better, that what he could do was just untie her ankles and let her float off into the middle of nowhere and never see her again. So he walked off perfectly happy with the fact he would never see his wife again, and Mrs. Twit had actually discovered that she could bite through the balloon strings and let herself back down. So we're about to read on and see what happens after that. Chapter 13, Mr. Twit gets a horrid shock. Mr. Twit, who thought he had seen his ugly wife for the last time, was sitting in the garden celebrating with a mug of beer. Silently, Mrs. Twit came floating down. When she was about the height of the house above Mr. Twit, she suddenly called out at the top of her voice, "Here I come, you grizzly old grunion, you rotten old turnip, you filthy old frumpet." Mr. Twit jumped as though he'd been stung by a giant wasp. He dropped his beer, he looked up, he gaped, he gasped, he gurgled. A few choking sounds came out of his mouth. "Ah!" he said. "Ah! Oh! I'll get you for this!" shouted Mrs. Twit. She was floating down, right on top of him. She was purple with rage and slashing the air with her long walking stick, which she had somehow managed to hang on to all the time. "I'll swish you a swazzle," she shouted. "I'll swash you to a swizzle. I'll nash you to a nozzle. I'll nosh you to a nazzle." And before Mr. Twit had time to run away, this bundle of balloons and petticoats and fiery fury landed right on top of him, lashing out with the stick and cracking him all over his body. Chapter 14, The House, the Tree and the Monkey Cage. But that's enough of that. We can't go on forever watching these two disgusting people doing disgusting things to each other. We must get ahead with the story. Here is a picture of Mr. and Mrs. Twit's house and garden. Some house, it looks like a prison, and not a window anywhere. "Who wants windows?" Mr. Twit had said when they were building it. "Who wants every Tom, Dick and Harry peeping in to see what you're doing?" It didn't occur to Mr. Twit that windows were meant mainly for looking out of, not for looking into. And what do you think of that ghastly garden? Mrs. Twit was the gardener. She was very good at growing thistles and stinging nettles. "I always grow plenty of spiky thistles and plenty of stinging nettles," she used to say. "They keep out nasty, nosy little children." Near the house you can see Mr. Twit's work shed. To one side there is the big dead tree. It never has any leaves on it because it's dead. And not far from the tree you can see the monkey cage. There are 4 monkeys in it. They belong to Mr. Twit. You will hear about them later. Chapter 15, Hug Tight, Sticky Glue. Once a week, on Wednesdays, the Twits had bird pie for supper. Mr. Twit caught the birds and Mrs. Twit cooked them. Mr. Twit was good at catching birds. On the day before Bird Pie Day, he would put the ladder up against the big dead tree and climb into the branches with a bucket of glue and a paintbrush. The glue he used was something called Hug Tight, and it was stickier than any other glue in the world. He would paint it along the tops of all the branches and then go away. As the sun went down, birds would fly in from all around to roost for the night in the big dead tree. They didn't know, poor things, that the branches were all smeared with horrible Hug Tight. The moment they landed on a branch, their feet stuck, and that was that. The next morning, which was Bird Pie Day, Mr. Twit would climb up the ladder again and grab all the wretched birds that were stuck to the tree. It didn't matter what kind they were, song thrushes, blackbirds, sparrows, crows, little Jenny wrens, robins, anything. went into the pot for Wednesday's bird pie supper. And that is the next 3 chapters of the Twits. So we're starting to move on with the story now. We've heard about the monkey cage, but we haven't found out any more about that. I have a feeling I might know which monkey is in the cage, but I'm not going to say anything yet. So the next instalment of the Twits will be on Monday after Easter weekend, which is very exciting. I hope you've all got lots of things ready to do. You've got some painting of eggs and colouring and painting. I know that I'm going to be having an Easter egg hunt, which is very exciting. Don't forget to let us all know what you're up to, and I shall see you on Monday for the next bit of the Twits. Take care.